YouTube crew! It's Multiplier here. How's it going? Today is a bit of a sort of thought to throw into your brains, almost like a follow-up to the video I did on white space in the music industry. I've had an idea that could be useful, and that idea is to start a podcast. So first of all, what is a podcast and why is it a good idea to start one? Now, podcasts are almost like on-demand radio to your ears. So audio things, so you sort of subscribe to a podcast on your telephone, and then whenever a new one comes out, then it goes ping into your podcast queue, you download it, well that's probably automatic, so automatically downloads to your phone, and then you're walking about or driving your car or something and you're listening to it, and that's fantastic. Now, the weird thing about podcasts is they've actually been around for an awful long time. Many years now, probably more than 10 years. But strangely, they still haven't really caught on. I mean, amongst people that listen to podcasts, such as me and other people, it's a huge part of their entire lives. Like people that typically listen to podcasts might listen to maybe an hour and a half every single day. So people that are into it are sort of mad into it and it's amazing, but it still hasn't quite captured the public, the zeitgeist. Maybe that's the wrong word. It hasn't quite become a mainstream thing in the same way that radio or YouTube is a mainstream thing now. So what I think we're in right now is a transition period. I just have a feeling that it's in that transition period. So like lots of new people are starting podcasts in many industries, and I think it's in that transition. It'll take a long time, don't get me wrong. I think it'll still be a few years, could be 2, 3, 4, 5 years maybe. Or maybe until one of the big players like Google comes up with a good discoverability tool for it. So I think we're still in that transition period for podcasting, and it'll be a few years until it becomes the main thing. I mean, just think 5 to 10 years in the future. There's absolutely no way that the concept of podcasting won't be a huge thing. The idea that you can have a audio bit of media pinged into your brain hole automatically through your telephone, that is, I mean, it's conceptually as big as YouTube or radio. It's like radio through the internet on demand whenever you like. It will just be one of those main pillars of media. But as I say, it's still not quite there yet. But also, as I say, I think we're in that transition. I've just got that feeling. I listen to an awful lot of podcasts across a range of different industries, music, business, surfing, comedy, etc. And it just feels like people are starting to start them. They're just sort of starting, and I think they will grow like a plant. Plant it in the ground. Plant grows. If I was to make a prediction, and in fact I will make a prediction right now, what I think will happen is, because basically one of the biggest problems with podcasting right now is it's incredibly hard to find out about new ones. You can be listening to a podcast in one bit of the industry, say surfing or whatever, and not even realise there's another podcast that's been going for 5 years. That's amazing, but it's just how do you even find out about it? Discoverability. There's a big problem with discoverability in the world of podcasts. There's pretty much only 2 main ways. First of all, on the iTunes page, in the new and noteworthy section, and the charts, but then again, I mean, I haven't looked at that in years. Any really new podcast people, listeners, that look at that. Also, collaborations. Collaborations are one of the tried and tested ways to discover new podcasts. So you get someone, say, who's got their own podcast, you get them on your show, and then you sort of talk about it and go, yeah, I've got a podcast too. That's tried and tested. But unlike, say, YouTube, there's no real natural way to discover things on a regular basis. You don't get that homepage, you don't get a suggested videos bit. So what I think will happen is Google or Apple or Amazon, probably Google if I was to place a firm bet, I think Google will come up with some sort of podcast style platform, maybe even call it podcast something or other, and then that will have all the magic algorithm stuff that YouTube has, and then you'll be able to discover new podcasts based on what you've currently listened to and how long you listen into it, and algorithmic, neural networky, computer magic craziness they do. So I think we're in the start of that transition into podcasting being one of the main pillars of society, pillars of media. Remember, society will just be all digital in the future anyway, so one of the pillars of society. I think when that transition, it's been incredibly slow growth over the years, or maybe from over here, slow growth, and then we're starting to transition. I think there'll be a big sort of jump when one of the big players does a decent discoverability play in the space, and that'll go boink, and then it'll be like, bah, crazy madness, and then podcasting will be huge. So, opportunity, there are probably only a handful. I mean, Pensado's plays EDM prod, maybe a few more that I don't know about, because of course the discoverability doesn't really work in podcasting. There's just not many podcasts in the music space. So opportunity, if you're into music production and you want an opportunity to be a big player in, say, some number of years' time, start a podcast. Now, podcasting is an awful lot of work. You've got to do it every single week or every other week or a few times a week on some form of schedule for years and years and years, and eventually it sort of starts to grow. Now, I do it myself, but I have way too many other things to do. YouTube, sample stuff, other things. So I've got too many things I'm trying to do at the moment, so I can't actually do a podcast right now. But if I was to do a podcast right now, the way I would do it is to create a podcast, maybe an hour-long podcast every week or every other week, depending on how often I could make that amount of time work. I'd do the podcast, and then to get new listeners, to do the discoverability side, I'd chop it up into sections. So I'd, of course, release the full-length podcast through the podcast, iTunes, hosting, media podcast route. Can't think of the correct name. I'd release the podcast full length as normal, as you normally do with podcasting, but then I'd also chop it up into various sections. Maybe I'd have 10 minutes on my favorite DJs, or 10 minutes on compression settings, and then 10 minutes on what I think about dubstep and stuff. So I'd kind of chop it up into sections relevant to music stuff, and then I'd release those individual sections as individual videos on YouTube. Chair making noises. So I basically have, let's say for every podcast, I'd have, let's say, 3 individual videos from that podcast, so not much extra work, just chopping up and adding tags and stuff. I'd have 3 individual videos that I'd stick on YouTube with a whole bunch of tags, and that way I'm leveraging the discoverability and the algorithms and the suggested video idea things in YouTube to get new listeners to my podcast. Otherwise, not many people would listen, because you can make a podcast, stick it on the interwebs, and unless you have a real idea to get new people involved, they're not going to listen, unfortunately. So leverage YouTube. Logical, and as I say, it wouldn't even be much extra work. You've kind of done all the hard work making the podcast, and then all you have to do is chop it up into sections and then upload it, stick a little nice thumbnail on it, little tag, dead mouse, what's he on about? That could be one video as you're ranting and raving about dead mouse or whatever it is. So is that a good idea? I think so. I'm sure I will do a podcast at some stage, just not right now, and I don't know, it'll be 6 months or a year or 2 years or 3 years until I do, or 5 years, probably not 5 years. And so I thought I'd tell you about it. 2 reasons. First of all, good advice for some people. Some people it's going to be like, oh, I've been meaning to do this for ages. Now, perfect opportunity. I'm going to get a big podcast, and that'd be great. And also, I need new podcasts to listen to. If you make new podcasts, that will give me something to listen to. Because as I say, there's not many podcasts in the world of EDM, electronic music production. Like regular, full-length, really good ones. So that'd be good for me as well, just purely selfishly there. And also good for you, because you could become the main player. Like, think about it, in 5 years' time, when podcasting is huge and a mainstay of society, if you're one of the 5 or 10 main guys doing electronic music production podcasts, that gives you mad leverage in the music space if you want such a thing. Either way, it's also a lot of fun. I remember doing a podcast for about 6 episodes or so, maybe 2 years or so ago, and it was lots of fun. It was called BLOUNCE. Is this still up? I've no idea. Probably. Probably a link in the description, but genuinely I haven't even checked it. Must be still up. I think I'm still paying for it. I can't remember. Anyway, yes, what I'm trying to say is podcasts are lots of fun. So think about it. And I'm sure for probably 5 or 6 of you, that's going to be like, yes, aha, aha, I will start a podcast. And then of those 5 or 6, 2, 3, 4, or 5 of you will probably give up after 3 to 4 episodes. And that's okay. You've tried it. You've got to keep trying things. But then for that 1 or 2 people's, going to have a long, brilliant thing started that I can listen to on my telephone. So podcasts. Podcasts are brilliant. I'm useless at simple tasks. There you go, nailed it. My name has been Multiplier, and I will catch you guys on the stand up and leave the room to complete the narrative of the video. Diddy, flippity, flippity flip, flippity flippity flip. Yeah.